I'm making bagels again because of course I am. And this person was asking if they could use this dough I'm making in that previous video this comment came from to make cinnamon rolls. And the short answer is no, but I thought I'd give a little more context. There are kind of two major categories in bread baking, and the first major category is called a lean dough. That is what I'm making in that video. A lean dough in its most basic form is water, flour, salt, yeast, and sometimes it has a few more ingredients in it, like a bagel, but typically it has no fat in it or very, very little fat in it. And lean doughs are used to make breads that have a very chewy texture and typically a crisp outer crust. So think about something like a baguette or a ciabatta or a bagel. The second main category of bread baking is enriched doughs. And enriched doughs are bread doughs that have a lot of fat in them and other things like possibly sugar or eggs, milk, things like that. Those enriching ingredients are going to create a bread dough that is much softer and more tender. Think about something like a cinnamon roll, or on the very far end of the spectrum of enriched dough, something like brioche. And the reason why that type of bread dough is going to make a soft bread dough is because fat actually kind of inhibits gluten formation, and gluten is where all the chewiness comes from in a bread dough. Fat also shortens gluten strands. So in case you're not familiar with what gluten is, it is actually a network of proteins. There are two proteins in wheat flour, glutenin and gliadin, and when they're hydrated, they are attracted to each other and they start bonding together to form this elastic network called gluten. And you can kind of think of it like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger that network of proteins is going to become. So when you make a bread dough, you're going to knead it for a long time in order to build the strength in that gluten network. But for something like a cake or a pastry, you're going to be really gentle with the dough so that you are not going to build that gluten too strongly. But for something like a cinnamon roll dough, we actually do need some strength in that gluten network because that is what traps all the gases in the bread dough from the yeast. But by adding fat with things like butter and eggs and things like that, it is going to kind of chop those gluten strands a little shorter, and we're not going to get as much chewiness, and it's going to be a much softer texture. So if you want to make cinnamon rolls, you will want to look for an enriched dough. I actually have a basic enriched dough recipe on my website that I use for my cinnamon rolls. I also use it for my soft dinner rolls. I use it for yeast donuts. And that bread that I'm making in that video where I'm using a poolish, you can use a poolish in a cinnamon roll dough, but it is just a lean dough. It's just water, flour, salt, yeast, and it makes a bread that's got that super, super chewy interior and also a really crisp crust. Hope this helps.